everybody.
Good afternoon.
It's a great pleasure to be here. It's my first time in Indonesia, and I'd always known it to be a very important large country and a large economy. But I'm absolutely blown away by the dynamic young population and just the sheer amount of innovation that's taking place. And I think there's just tremendous opportunity going ahead. And today I want to share with you my life's work on mega projects and infrastructure. And I hope some of the research we've done at Oxford is of use to you in taking the country forward. So a little bit about me. I am a fixture at Oxford, practically a monument at this point. I've been there 10 years, which is a long time in an 800-year-old university, as is. And I've been working on infrastructure, first as my PhD, and since then as a member of faculty at the Said Business School. I teach in two courses. I direct the MSc in Major Program Management. So any young professionals who build projects, please do get in touch. We have had some very distinguished alumni from Indonesia, including Emil, who gave one of the presentations yesterday, and we're very keen on attracting more similarly able students from Indonesia and elsewhere in Asia. I also teach on UK Government's Major Projects Leadership Academy, which is delivered in partnership with the Cabinet Office and Deloitte. And my colleague Nick Pryor is in the audience that you'll hear from a little bit later. And that's designed for very senior civil servants in the UK and help them deliver mega projects, infrastructure, as well as social transformation projects better. So very keen to share some of that experience with you as well. Finally, much of our research is very practice-oriented. So we do a lot of data collection, we engage with practitioners firsthand. So what I'm going to share with you is very practical and is not driven by theories in the ivory tower, and I hope you'll enjoy that. That is Oxford on an optimistic day. This is what it really looks like, but it's lovely all the same. And I hope to share some of the wisdom of these stones with you. So my agenda is very simple today. I'm going to share some good news with you. Then I'm going to share some bad news, and just before we leave, I'm going to give you some more good news so you don't go home feeling too depressed. So the first piece of good news is that infrastructure provides tremendous opportunity. And that opportunity can transform a country and create the basis for tremendous growth and prosperity. Anybody recognize where this might be? Any thoughts? Dubai. In less than 16 years, an absolutely barren patch of desert has transformed, owing to a very large number of mega projects, into a bustling metropolis. And you've probably seen a similar transformation take place in Jakarta over that long period of time. Mega projects leave a very large visible footprint in the economy, and much of it, if delivered right, is of use to the society. Similarly, in Singapore, in 1974, a very quaint port is now transformed into one of the world's busiest ports that has been the basis of the economic success of the country. And we've seen in the data presented by the minister early on, just the sheer amount of prosperity this infrastructure has created in Singapore. So the opportunity in mega projects is clearly to enable that economic prosperity. And Singapore is a really good example of a country that got that sequence right in terms of putting in the infrastructure as and when required and upgrading it as it went along. It's a particularly good time to build infrastructure because the money is cheap, commodities are cheap, so you don't have to spend a lot of money on oil and gas and steel and everything else that goes into infrastructure. Labor is available, and there's quite a bit of slack in the global supply chains because China isn't consuming as voraciously as it was before. So many other countries can actually find access to these resources that are desperately needed to build the right sort of infrastructure. So in terms of a kind of a overall global perspective, this is a pretty good time to get involved in infrastructure. And it's no wonder infrastructure is such big business. We're still with the good news, but we're going to come to the bad news in a second. So it has become very big business. McKinsey estimates that nearly $57 trillion needs to be spent on infrastructure, and the demand is there. So $1 million is a very, very small packet of cash that's barely visible to the gentleman in the corner of my slide. 100 million is something that is beginning to make a little bit more of a visible impact. $1 billion is something, we could walk around. And $1 trillion is sort of money I like, right? But we're talking about 3 slides of it. That's how much money is being spent on infrastructure. So it's a huge influx globally. And there's more to mega projects than just infrastructure. So infrastructure is just one corner of my bubble there. There's equipment purchases, there are technology-enabled change programs, there's social change, behavioral change stuff, mega events like the Olympics, crisis management, cities, movies, video games, growth for enterprises, the list goes on. We estimate that market to be $6 to $9 trillion a year. So absolutely massive, about 9 times the size of China's economy. So infrastructure is appealing for all these reasons. It creates employment. You can substitute bad climate infrastructure with better climate infrastructure. You could create benefits for your citizens by providing them with better social services, and you can create economic prosperity. But there's an if in the fine print. And that if is if they are done right. Because infrastructure mega projects are also a double-edged sword. If they go wrong, they create a massive mess, economically, politically, and socially. So let's look at what that mess can be, and that's the bad news. Your plan is your plan, and it's very different from reality. And the unwise think that your plan and your reality would converge, but they're down. So your plan moves in a straight line with a big golden trophy at the end. Reality is a treacherous journey with a much smaller trophy at the end, if you survive. And we see this in the data on infrastructure. So put yourselves in the shoes of the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, the country of my origin. And Pakistan has 2 issues and a resource. It has tremendous amount of water, it has Himalayan ice melt, but it has floods and electricity shortfall. What should the country do? Have a quick chat on your table, and then we'll field some answers. So lots of water that causes flooding, but there's also massive electricity shortfall. What should the country do? Have a quick chat, and then let's field your answers. I'll actually come down so I can see you. Thoughts in the back? Somebody want to shout out a solution? Hydroelectricity. What scale?
Medium to small spread.
This gentleman says medium to small spread. Other thoughts? Micro? Mini? Other thoughts? What do you think they're doing? So there's lots of sensible suggestions here. What do you think Pakistan's embarked on?
Building big dams.
Building big dams. Why are they building big dams?
More power.
More power. So it's a big problem. A big dam is supposedly sorts out that big problem in one big step. So the reason people are attracted to mega projects is they seem to solve that big challenge. There's a big power need, there's a big flooding problem, solve it in one stroke. So that's exactly what the country is doing by building 4 big mega dams, right? Do you think the course of these dams will be easy? Will it be easy to implement these mega projects? Table 16. How will it go? Not easy.
Financing, you need money.
You need money. You need resources. What else? Sorry? Environmental impact. What else? Capability. Do they have the project managers to do this? Do they have the financiers to do it? Do you have people who can manage the environment? Other thoughts? Security. Is the dam structurally safe? Can it be attacked in case of a conflict? Other thoughts? Sorry?
Displaced people.
Displaced people. It's not politically easy. It creates social consequences. The list goes on. There are multiple challenges. And we see that in our data. So we collected data on 269 mega dams around the world, going all the way back to 1934, in pretty much every major continent of the planet, diverse data sources. And what we find, first of all, that dams have a very terrible track record of coming in on budget. What I'm showing there is the distribution of the cost overruns. It is systematically biased towards very severe cost overruns. On average, after removing the effects of inflation, the costs are doubling. 1 in 3 dams are tripling their costs. So Pakistan is currently building a $10 billion dam called Daimi Pasha. If it goes horribly wrong, it will cost $30 billion. That will lead to a sovereign debt default. Very, very dangerous stuff. Moreover, it's a global phenomenon. The North American dams have a better performance, but they were built at a time and at a scale that's quite different than some of the dams that many developing countries are attempting today. And why this happens has a lot to do with uncertainty. So that's Harold Macmillan smoking his pipe in Balliol Common Room in Oxford, saying, events, dear boys and girls, events. And these events that affect dams are multifold. There's weather events, there's wars, there's labor strikes, there's currency movements, inflation, geological movements, you name it, it happens. Anything that can go wrong does go wrong. And the consequence of that is cost overruns, time overruns, benefit shortfalls, profound difficulties. To give you an example, this is a mega dam in Colombia called Chivor. On the left-hand side is the project's appraisal report, the business case of the project, that says, oh, we don't need to worry about the exchange rate between the US dollar and the peso because the government has a very enlightened policy. Now, anytime you ever see the words government's enlightened policy, run away. On the right-hand side is 99% depreciation of the Colombian peso against the US dollar. That caused a 35% cost increase. Similarly, a mega dam in Brazil, where on the left-hand side, the estimate of the planners before they built the dam was, we have put in a 20% contingency, which is actually quite a high contingency, to protect against soft rock in building the dam. But as they got to the dam site, they had to keep digging and digging and digging. It doubled the cost of the dam in real terms. It's after removing the effects of inflation. Bad stuff. Third, Terbela, closer to home for me. Again, the business case by the World Bank says, oh, there'll only be a little bit of inflation in the country. We've put in a 7.5% contingency in line with normal practice. So anytime you see those words as well, in line with normal practice, run away. Best practice is your biggest enemy. It caused 380% cost overrun. There is no scenario this dam will ever pay itself back, as big and as important as it is, and as big of a political feature as it is. Finally, in Nigeria, in Kainji Dam, the prediction in the business case before the dam was built was that this river on which they were building was a very well-behaved river, even though there is no such thing. And in reality, that's exactly what happened. The river's flow is so unpredictable, there's either a flood that threatens the structural integrity of the dam, or a drought that means that it can't produce any electricity. So as a result, the net benefits of the dam have a 75% shortfall. All of this is pretty depressing. I can see that on your faces. So we'll come back to the good news in a little bit, but bear with me and bear with this pain for a little bit longer. This challenge of cost overruns is universal. It's a bit like maternal love. Wherever you go, you find it equally. Close to home for me in the UK, Channel Tunnel costs doubled. Anybody want to attempt doubling this for me? A 200% cost overrun. A 200% cost overrun means tripling of the initial cost estimate. 100% cost overrun means whatever you said it was going to cost, it cost the double. Anybody want to attempt any local Indonesian examples of it tripling of the budget? Airport, good. Airports are high up there, very good. Berlin Airport. So this sort of stuff happens even to the Germans. It's 200% and counting. So it's not uniquely a British problem or Pakistani problem. Healthcare.gov in the UK, 400% cost overrun. Technology often has cost overruns of that nature, 5 times the initial budget. Anybody want to double that? Big Dig, it's much bigger than that. It's about 1,200%. Other projects? Sydney Opera House, the world's most iconic 20th century building. Sydney Opera House is 1,400% cost overrun. I have put Suez Canal there at 1,900% cost overrun. It's much more than double that, right? So these projects, these iconic projects, have a serious problem. The challenge, as I said, is international. This sort of thing happens even to the Germans. But the private sector also suffers. What I've put up there are steel mills that ThyssenKrupp developed, a German steel company, in Brazil, the US, and China. They all went horribly wrong. The company went nearly bankrupt, a 200-year-old company, and has had to deal with a massive cash injection, et cetera, et cetera. And by and large, we don't see the private sector delivering mega projects with any better track record than the public sector. There's also a problem with schedule overrun. A dam typically takes 8.6 years to build, including a 2-year delay on average. This does not include the planning horizon. This is just the construction period. So the farmers in Pakistan that need electricity today and that need flood protection today will be long dead by the time that over-budget dam comes.